On a cold winter evening in Chicago, when most people were hurrying home to escape the biting wind, a basketball's rhythmic bounce echoed through an abandoned court. The sound carried across empty streets, past shut-down stores, and into the shadows where 17-year-old Aaron Kirby called home. The teen's worn-out sneakers, held together by duct tape and determination, squeaked against the cracked concrete as he practiced his fadeaway jumper. The neighborhood knew him as the kid who never gave up, who played through rain and shine, through hunger and hardship. What they didn't know was that Aaron had been living in the abandoned building next to the court for the past 8 months, ever since his mom lost her battle with cancer and the medical bills took everything they had. Basketball wasn't just a game for Aaron. It was his escape, his hope, and sometimes his only friend. Every night, after the nearby shelter served dinner, he would come to this court and shoot until his arms ached, imagining he was playing in the same arena where his hero, Michael Jordan, had become a legend. The flickering streetlight cast long shadows across the court as Aaron moved through his routine. His shoes were falling apart, the sole of his right sneaker nearly completely separated, but he kept playing. Each shot, each dribble was a defiance against his circumstances. The irony wasn't lost on him, a kid dreaming of being like Mike. While unable to afford even basic basketball shoes, tonight felt different though. Maybe it was the unusual number of black SUVs that had driven past slowly, or the occasional flash of cameras from the street. Aaron kept playing, used to being a curiosity to passers-by. But then the court fell silent, save for the sound of footsteps. Approaching, a tall figure emerged from the shadows, and Aaron's basketball slipped from his fingers, bouncing away into the darkness. There, standing under the dim streetlight, was Michael Jordan himself. The greatest basketball player of all time was watching him with an expression of quiet intensity, holding a shoebox in his hands. "Nice fadeaway, kid," Jordan said, his voice carrying across the empty court. "But you can't perfect that shot in shoes that are falling apart." Aaron stood frozen, his heart pounding in his chest. This couldn't be real. He had to be dreaming. But the cold air on his face, the ache in his muscles, and Michael Jordan's presence felt too vivid to be anything but reality. What happened next would change Aaron's life forever, though at that moment, all he could focus on was the surreal sight of his basketball idol walking toward him, shoebox in hand, on a broken-down court that had become his only home. On a cold winter evening in Chicago, when most people were hurrying home to escape the biting wind, a basketball's rhythmic bounce echoed through an abandoned court. The sound carried across empty streets, past shut-down stores, and into the shadows where 17-year-old Aaron Kirby called home. The hollow thump of leather against concrete had become as natural as a heartbeat to the residents of this forgotten corner of the city, a soundtrack to their daily struggles that played out long after the sun had set. The teen's worn-out sneakers, held together by duct tape and determination, squeaked against the cracked concrete as he practiced his fadeaway jumper. The neighborhood knew him as the kid who never gave up, who played through rain and shine, through hunger and hardship. What they didn't know was that Aaron had been living in the abandoned building next to the court for the past 8 months, ever since his mom lost her battle with cancer and the medical bills took everything they had. Every morning, Aaron would wake up on his makeshift bed, a collection of donated blankets arranged carefully in the corner of what used to be someone's office, and stare at the only possession he refused to sell, a poster of Michael Jordan's famous last shot against the Utah Jazz. It was the last birthday gift his mother had given him, and now it served as both inspiration and a bitter reminder of how quickly life could change. Basketball wasn't just a game for Aaron. It was his escape, his hope, and sometimes his only friend. Every night, After the nearby shelter served dinner, he would come to this court and shoot until his arms ached, imagining he was playing in the same arena where his hero, Michael Jordan, had become a legend. The shelter staff had offered him a permanent bed, but Aaron couldn't bear the thought of leaving the neighborhood where his mother's memories still lived in every corner, every storefront, and especially in this court where she used to watch him play. The local community looked out for him in their own way. Mrs. Rodriguez from the corner store would save day-old sandwiches for him, and Coach Thompson from the high school he used to attend before everything fell apart would let him use the gym showers before classes started. Aaron still attended school, determined to graduate as he had promised his mother, but few of his classmates knew that while they headed home after the final bell, he headed to a hollow building with broken windows and dreams that seemed to grow more distant with each passing day. The flickering streetlight cast long shadows across the court as Aaron moved through his routine. His shoes were falling apart, the sole of his right sneaker nearly completely separated, but he kept playing. Each shot, each dribble, was a defiance against his circumstances. The irony wasn't lost on him, a kid dreaming of being like Mike while unable to afford even basic basketball shoes. Still, he played on, his technique perfect, despite his ragged appearance, a testament to countless hours of practice and an unwavering dedication to the game. The cold had begun to seep through his thin jacket, but Aaron barely noticed. He was lost in his usual fantasy, imagining the empty court transformed into the United Center, the silence filled with the roar of thousands of fans. In his mind, the shot clock was winding down, his team down by 1 in the championship game. He had perfected this daydream over countless nights, using it to push through hunger, cold, and exhaustion. Miss Washington, his English teacher, had once told him that basketball wouldn't solve his problems, that he needed a more realistic plan. But she didn't understand that every hour he spent on this court was an hour he wasn't thinking about his next meal or worrying about where he would sleep when winter really hit. The game kept him going, kept him sane, kept him believing that somehow, someday, things would get better. Tonight felt different, though. Maybe it was the unusual number of black SUVs that had driven past slowly, or the occasional flash of cameras from the street. Aaron kept playing, used to being a curiosity to passers-by. Some would throw coins or dollar bills on the sideline, mistaking him for a street performer, but he never touched the money during his practice. His mother had taught him that dignity wasn't something you could buy or sell, and he held onto that lesson like a lifeline. The winter wind picked up, whistling through the chain-link fence that surrounded the court. Aaron's fingers were numb, but he continued his drills. Crossover, between the legs, behind the back. Each move executed with a precision that belied his circumstances. His shoes might be falling apart, but his game was tight, refined by necessity and passion rather than formal coaching. He had just set up for another shot when he noticed something odd. The usual background noise of the city, distant sirens, passing cars, the rattle of the elevated train, had suddenly dimmed as if the world itself was holding its breath. Then the court fell silent save for the sound of footsteps approaching. A tall figure emerged from the shadows and Aaron's basketball slipped from his fingers, bouncing away into the darkness. There, standing under the dim streetlight, was Michael. Jordan himself, the greatest basketball player of all time, was watching him with an expression of quiet intensity, holding a shoebox in his hands. "Nice fadeaway, kid," Jordan said, his voice carrying across the empty court. "But you can't perfect that shot in shoes that are falling apart." Aaron stood frozen, his heart pounding in his chest. This couldn't be real. He had to be dreaming. But the cold air on his face, the ache in his muscles, and Michael Jordan's presence felt too vivid to be anything but reality. He tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. This was the man whose poster he woke up to every morning, whose highlights he studied on his borrowed phone, whose career he knew better than his own life story. Jordan took another step forward, and Aaron noticed more figures emerging from the shadows. People with cameras, some with notepads, all keeping a respectful distance. But Jordan's focus remained solely on Aaron, his gaze moving from the teen's face to his battered shoes and back again. "I've been watching you play," Jordan continued, his voice carrying the same intensity that had made him famous. "Someone told me about the kid who plays here every night, rain or shine. Said you had game, but needed some help with your equipment." He gestured to Aaron's shoes, where the duct tape was clearly visible even in the dim light. Aaron's mind raced, trying to process what was happening. He thought about all the nights he'd spent on this court, talking to an imaginary Michael Jordan, asking for advice, sharing his dreams and fears with the darkness. And now, somehow, the real Michael Jordan was standing in front of him, holding what looked like a brand new pair of shoes. The moment felt surreal, like one of his daydreams had suddenly materialized. But there was something in Jordan's eyes, a look of recognition, perhaps, or understanding, that grounded the moment in reality. This wasn't just about basketball or shoes. This was about seeing someone who needed help and choosing to do something about it, about recognizing the fight in someone who refused to give up despite overwhelming odds. Aaron finally managed to speak, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've been practicing that fadeaway for months." A smile tugged at the corner of Jordan's mouth. "I can tell. Your form is good, but your footwork needs work. Hard to get. That right when you're worried about your shoes falling apart." The honesty in Jordan's voice, the absence of pity, made Aaron stand a little straighter. This wasn't charity. This was one basketball player talking to another, one competitor, recognizing another's potential. "You know what made me the player I am?" Jordan asked, taking another step forward. "It wasn't just talent. It was the fire inside, the drive to be better, no matter what. I see that same fire in you, kid. You're out here every night working, on your game, not letting anything stop you. That's the kind of dedication that changes lives." As Jordan spoke, Aaron noticed something remarkable. The great basketball player wasn't looking at him with pity or charity. There was respect in his eyes, recognition of a kindred spirit who understood that basketball wasn't just a game, but a language, a way of speaking truth to power, of rising above circumstances. What happened next would change Aaron's life forever, though at that moment, all he could focus on was the surreal sight of his basketball idol walking toward him, shoebox in hand, on a broken-down court that had become his only home. The cameras flashed in the background, recording this moment for posterity. But for Aaron, time seemed to stand still, crystallizing into a memory he would carry with him for the rest of his life. The true significance of this moment wouldn't hit him until later, how this chance encounter would spark a chain of events that would transform not just his life, but the lives of countless other young players facing similar struggles. But right now, on this cold Chicago evening, it was just two basketball players sharing a court, bound together by their love for the game and the understanding that sometimes the biggest dreams start in the smallest places. Jordan was now standing directly in front of Aaron, close enough that the teen could see the determination in his eyes, the same look he'd seen in countless game-winning moments, now focused entirely on this single act of kindness. "Let's see if we can't help you take your game to the next level," Jordan said, extending the shoebox toward Aaron. "Sometimes all it takes is the right pair of shoes and someone who believes in you." The morning after his life-changing encounter with Michael Jordan, Aaron woke up in his makeshift bedroom to find his new Air Jordans sitting perfectly aligned where he'd placed them the night before. For a moment, he just stared at them, afraid that if he blinked, they might disappear along with everything else that had happened. The early morning light filtering through the broken windows cast a golden glow on the shoes, making the custom stitching of his name shimmer. Next to the shoes lay the envelope containing the program details, its crisp white paper a stark contrast to the worn floorboards. Aaron had read it at least a dozen times by flashlight after Jordan left, each reading making it seem more incredible than the last. Full academic support, housing assistance, basketball training, mentorship. It was everything he needed. Everything. His mother would have wanted for him. His mother. Aaron's eyes drifted to her photo, carefully preserved in a plastic sleeve and pinned to the wall next to Jordan's poster. "Can you believe it, Mom?" he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Your boy played one-on-one with Michael Jordan." The sound of footsteps in the hallway snapped Aaron back to reality. He quickly grabbed his backpack and the envelope, carefully tucked his new shoes into his gym bag, and headed for the window. His usual exit route to avoid the building's other squatters. But before he could climb out, a familiar voice called his name. "Aaron, you in there, kid?" It was Officer Martinez, his flashlight beam cutting through the dim hallway. For a moment, Aaron froze. Despite knowing Officer Martinez was one of the people who had spoken to Jordan about him, years of instinct told him to run, but something made him stay. Maybe it was the events of last night, or maybe it was just time to stop running. "I'm here," he called out, stepping into the hallway. "Officer." Martinez appeared, but he wasn't alone. Behind him stood Coach Thompson and Mrs. Rodriguez, all wearing expressions that mixed concern with something else. Hope, maybe. "We saw the news," Coach Thompson said, holding up his phone. The screen showed a video of Aaron and Jordan on the court, the headline reading, "NBA legend Michael Jordan launches youth program with surprising midnight basketball session." "You're trending, mijo," Mrs. Rodriguez added with a warm smile. "The whole neighborhood's talking about it." Aaron shifted uncomfortably, not used to being the center of attention. "I still can't believe it really happened." "Believe it, officer," Martinez said firmly. "And believe this. You're not staying here another night. Mrs. Rodriguez has a spare room above her store. It's yours until we get the housing situation sorted out through Jordan's program." Aaron felt his throat tighten. I don't want charity." "Charity?" Mrs. Rodriguez scoffed. "You think I'm running a charity? You'll help in the store before and after school. You'll earn your keep, but no more sleeping in this." She gestured at the crumbling walls, "This place that holds too many sad memories." Coach Thompson stepped forward, placing a hand on Aaron's shoulder. "Your mother wouldn't want you living like this, son. She'd want you to take this chance, to let people help you the way you've helped others." "Helped others?" Aaron asked, confused. "Don't play modest," Officer Martinez chuckled. "You think we haven't noticed the way you help the younger kids with their homework in the library? How you share your food from the shelter with old Mr. Jenkins? How you keep this block safer just by being here, giving people hope?" Aaron hadn't thought anyone had noticed these things. He did them because that's what his mother had taught him, that even when you have nothing, you can still give something. "The program papers," Coach Thompson said, nodding at the envelope in Aaron's hand. "Have you read them?" Aaron nodded. "About 100 times." "Then you know this isn't just about basketball. It's about education, about community, about becoming someone who can lift others up. That's why Jordan chose you, Aaron, not just because of your game, but because of who you are." The morning sun had risen higher, streaming through the broken windows and illuminating the hallway. Aaron looked at these three people: the police officer who had never arrested him for trespassing, the coach who had kept him connected to school, the store owner who had helped feed him, and realized that maybe he hadn't been as alone as he'd thought. "There's a press conference this afternoon," Coach Thompson continued. "Jordan's people want you there. They're announcing the program officially, and you're the face of it. But before that," he glanced at his watch, "you've got school. Can't have the program's first student missing classes, can we?" For the first time that morning, Aaron smiled. "No, sir, but I need to shower first." "Already handled," Officer Martinez said. "The community center's expecting you. New clothes, too. Can't have you meeting the press in that." He nodded at Aaron's worn outfit. As they walked out of the abandoned building together, Aaron took one last look at the space that had been his home these past months. The poster of Jordan's last shot caught his eye, and suddenly he understood something. That shot hadn't just been about winning a game. It had been about trust, about taking the chance when it presents itself, about believing in the possibility of something better. The next few hours passed in a blur. The shower at the community center, the new clothes that somehow fit perfectly, the whispers and stares at school. Word had spread fast, and suddenly everyone wanted to talk to the kid who had played one-on-one with Michael Jordan. But Aaron's closest friends, the ones who had shared their lunches with him when he had none, who had never asked why he wore the same clothes day after day, they treated him the same as always. During lunch break, Aaron finally found a quiet moment to change into his new Jordans. As he laced them up in the empty locker room, he remembered Jordan's words from the night before. The shoes, the program, the opportunity, they're tools. What you do with them, that's up to you. The afternoon press conference was held at the United Center, home of the Chicago Bulls. Aaron had never been inside before, had only dreamed about it while practicing on his broken-down court. Now here he was, walking through the same tunnels where Jordan had made history. In the press room, Jordan was already waiting, along with a group of serious-looking people in suits, program directors, educational consultants, community leaders. But Jordan's eyes lit up when he saw Aaron. "There's our man," he said, walking over to greet him. "Nice to see you in the daylight, kid. Those shoes treating you right?" Aaron nodded, still somewhat starstruck despite their interaction the night before. "Yes, sir. Perfect fit." "Good. Now, ready to help me change some lives?" The press conference was more than just an announcement of a program. It was a statement about belief in young people, about the power of community, about the responsibility of success to create more success. Jordan spoke about his own journey, about the importance of education alongside athletics, about the need to invest in potential wherever it's found. But when he called Aaron to the podium, something unexpected happened. Instead of just standing there as planned, Aaron felt compelled to speak. 8 months ago, he began, his voice shaky at first but growing stronger. "I lost my mom to cancer. She was everything to me, my support, my inspiration, my coach in the game of life. When she died, I lost our home, lost my direction, almost lost hope, but I didn't lose her lessons." He paused, gathering his courage as he saw Mrs. Rodriguez, wiping tears from her eyes in the audience, saw Coach Thompson nodding encouragingly. "She taught me that no matter what you don't have, you focus on what you do have. I had basketball, I had my education, I had a community that cared, even when I didn't know it. And now, thanks to Mr. Jordan and this program, I have a chance to make my mom proud, to help other kids like me see that their dreams matter too." The room erupted in applause, but Aaron wasn't finished. "This isn't just about me. It's about every kid out there who's practicing on a broken hoop, studying by streetlight, holding onto a dream that seems impossible. I'm here to tell you, keep holding on, keep working, keep believing, because sometimes when you least expect it, your shot goes in." As the cameras flashed and the reporters called out questions, Jordan stood next to Aaron, a proud smile on his face. This was more than a publicity event now. It was the beginning of something real, something that would ripple out beyond this room, beyond Chicago, beyond basketball. Later that evening, after the press had gone and the papers were all signed, Aaron found himself back on his court. But he wasn't alone. Kids from the neighborhood had gathered, drawn by the news, eager to see the shoes, to hear the story firsthand, to share in the magic of what had happened. As Aaron demonstrated the moves Jordan had taught him, sharing the wisdom he'd received, he realized something profound. His mother had always told him that blessings weren't meant to be kept, but passed on. And here, teaching these young players on the same court where his own dream had taken flight, he understood exactly what she meant. The streetlights flickered, on just as they had the night before, but everything was different now. Aaron Kirby was no longer just the kid who never gave up. He was living proof that sometimes, if you keep shooting your shot, the world finds a way to pass you the ball. Right back. 1 week after the press conference, Aaron's story had spread far beyond Chicago. Video clips of his midnight game with Jordan had gone viral. His heartfelt speech had been shared millions of times, and his broken-down court had become something of a pilgrimage site for young basketball players from across the city. But for Aaron, the most significant changes were happening much closer to home. His new room above Mrs. Rodriguez's store was small but clean, with a real bed and a desk for studying. The walls were freshly painted, and Jordan's program had provided him with a laptop for schoolwork. But what meant the most to Aaron was the window that overlooked his court, allowing him to keep watch over the place that had saved him during his darkest times. "Mijo," Mrs. Rodriguez called up the stairs one afternoon as Aaron was finishing his homework. "You have visitors." Aaron headed downstairs to find 3 teenagers waiting in the store, looking nervous but determined. He recognized them from the neighborhood but had never spoken to them before. "You're him, right?" the tallest one asked. "The kid who played with Jordan?" Aaron nodded, noticing their worn-out shoes and hungry looks. He knew those looks well. The boy hesitated, then straightened up. "We heard you're starting some kind of program, teaching basketball, helping with school stuff. Is that true?" It was true. After the press conference, Aaron had approached Jordan with an idea. While the official program was being set up, why not start something smaller, more immediate, right here in the neighborhood? Jordan had loved it, providing equipment and arranging for local coaches to help. "First session's tonight at 6, Aaron said, watching their faces light up. "But you'll need your latest report cards. This isn't just about basketball." Instead of being discouraged, the boys broke into grins. "We got them right here," the shortest one said, pulling folded papers from his pocket. "We heard about the rules. No grades, no game." Word had spread exactly as Aaron had hoped it would. His story wasn't just about one lucky kid meeting his hero. It was about creating opportunities, about showing that hard work in all areas of life mattered. By 6 o'clock, the court was filled with more than 20 young players, each clutching their report cards like tickets to a better future. Coach Thompson was there, along with 2 other local coaches Jordan's foundation had hired. But before any basketball could be played, Aaron gathered everyone around. "This court," he began, his voice carrying across the familiar space. "This is where I learned that sometimes your biggest obstacles become your greatest opportunities. Each crack in the concrete, each missing net, each broken backboard, they taught me to adapt, to overcome, to never make excuses." He looked at the faces around him, seeing his own story reflected in their eyes. "But the most important thing I learned here is that no one makes it alone. So this program isn't just about becoming better players, it's about becoming better teammates, better students, better members of this community." The program structure was simple but effective. 2 hours of supervised study hall at the local library before court time, mandatory tutoring for anyone struggling in classes, and basketball training that emphasized not just skills, but character. As the evening progressed, something magical happened. The court that had been Aaron's solitary refuge became a place of community. Older players helped younger ones with drills. Kids who'd been struggling in school found study partners. The same neighbors who had watched Aaron's lonely practices now brought water and snacks for everyone. Officer Martinez stopped by, not to check for trouble, but to join in, showing some surprisingly good moves for a man in uniform. Mrs. Rodriguez closed her store early to watch, beaming with pride as Aaron taught the younger kids the proper shooting form. But the real moment of impact came later that evening when a black SUV pulled up. The court fell silent as Michael Jordan himself stepped out, carrying several boxes of new basketball shoes. "Heard you were starting without me," Jordan said with a grin, setting the boxes down. "Thought you might need some proper equipment." The kids were awestruck, but Aaron noticed something interesting. While they were excited to see Jordan, they weren't just asking for autographs. They were showing him their report cards, telling him about their goals, explaining what they'd learned. From Aaron's story, Jordan pulled Aaron aside as the others excitedly tried on their new shoes. "You know," he said quietly, "when I started this program, I thought it was about giving kids like you a chance. But you've shown me it's about much more than that. It's about creating leaders who can lift others up." Aaron watched as one of the older boys helped a younger one lace up his new shoes, showing the same care that Jordan had shown him that first night. "That's what my mom always said," he replied. "That true blessing is in giving, not receiving." Jordan nodded thoughtfully. "Speaking of giving, I've been talking with the city council. This court, it's special. Sacred ground, you might say. They've agreed to let us renovate it, but with one condition." Aaron held his breath, waiting. It has to keep its character. No fancy indoor facility, no state-of-the-art complex, just better hoops, better lighting, better surface. Keep it real, keep it accessible. What do you think? Aaron looked around. At the court that had been his home, his school, his sanctuary. "It's perfect," he said. "But can we add something?" "Name it." "A wall. A clean wall where kids can put up pictures of their dreams, their goals. And at the top..." Aaron hesitated, then continued. "At the top, my mom's favorite saying, 'Dreams take flight on the wings of determination.'" Jordan's eyes softened. "Consider it done. And Aaron, your mom was right." As the evening wound down, Aaron gathered everyone for one final announcement. "Tomorrow," he said, "we start for real. Everyone who showed up today is in. But there's one rule that matters more than any other. You have to help someone else. Could be with homework, could be with basketball, could be with life. Because that's what this is all about, lifting as we climb." The next few weeks saw Aaron's initiative grow beyond anything he'd imagined. The morning study groups at the library expanded to include kids from other neighborhoods. Local businesses, inspired by Mrs. Rodriguez, started offering part-time jobs to program participants who maintained their grades. Even the city's other community centers began replicating the model. But it was the small moments that meant the most to Aaron. Like when shy Marcus, who'd barely spoken during the first sessions, helped tutor others in math. Or when Lisa, who'd never played basketball before, made her first basket and the whole court erupted in cheers. Or when tough guy DeAndre admitted he needed help with reading and found himself surrounded by supportive peers instead of ridicule. 1 month after that, first night with Jordan, Aaron stood on his court, now newly resurfaced but still wonderfully familiar, and watched as kids played pickup games, studied on the new benches, and added their dreams to the wall of hope, as they'd named it. His own photo with Jordan hung at the center of the wall, but it was surrounded by hundreds of other pictures, quotes, and goals. "Future doctor," read one. "First in family to college," declared another. "NBA dreams start here," proclaimed several. But Aaron's favorite was the simplest, a small note that read, "Thank you for showing us how to believe." Coach Thompson joined him, watching the scene. "You know what the best part is?" he asked. "What's that, Coach?" "Every kid here knows your story, knows you lived in that building, played on this court, never gave up. But they don't see you as someone who got lucky. They see you as proof that their dreams matter too." Aaron touched his mother's words, now beautifully painted at the top of the wall. "Sometimes I wonder," he said softly, "if Mom somehow knew. If she knew that losing her would lead to all this, to helping all these kids." Coach Thompson put a hand on his shoulder. "She knew you had greatness in you. Not just basketball greatness, heart greatness. And she was right. As the sun set on another day at the court, Aaron gathered everyone for their new evening tradition. Standing in a circle, each person shared one thing they were grateful for and one way they'd help someone else tomorrow. When it came to Aaron's turn, he looked at these faces that had become like family, at this court that had become more than just a place to play, at this community that had shown him the true meaning of teamwork. "I'm grateful," he said, his voice clear in the evening air, "for second chances and midnight miracles, and tomorrow I promise to keep showing up, keep believing, and keep passing on what I've learned. Because sometimes the biggest dreams start on the smallest courts, and the greatest victories aren't about the game, they're about the lives we change along the way." As the group dispersed for the night, Aaron stayed behind for a moment, just as he used to do. But now, instead of practicing alone in the darkness, he was planning tomorrow's sessions, thinking about new ways to help others find their light. The streetlight flickered on, illuminating the court just as it had that fateful night with Jordan, but now it shone on something greater than one player's dream. It shone on a community's revival, on hope taking root, on the power of one story to spark countless others. Aaron looked up at his mother's words one last time before heading home. Not to an abandoned building, but to a real room, with a real future ahead. "Dreams take flight on the wings of determination," he whispered, and somewhere he was sure his mother was smiling.